Have you ever wondered? Something that can transform a man's heart by war and violence. The story of the Roman Centurion, the soldier who witnessed the crucifixion, reveals a surprising truth. Even in the midst of pain and brutality, there is a love so powerful that it can change everything. Stay until the end and find out how this encounter marked not only the life of a soldier, but also the destiny of humanity. It was a gloomy day. The sky looked darker than usual, and one atmosphere of unrest weighed on Mount Golgotha. Among the crowding crowd, to witness the crucifixion, highlighted a man who was not there as a simple spectator, was a Roman Centurion, a soldier by war and death. To witnessing suffering without flinching, his duty was clear: to ensure that the execution was carried out without interruption. For him, it was just one more day of work, one more crucifixion, another display of Rome's relentless power. Stay with us to the end and discover how the not only changed that day at Golgotha, but continues to impact lives to this day. Before starting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Together, we can share this message of hope with more people. However, that day would not be like any other. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that would forever mark the life of the centurion. In front of him was not an ordinary condemned man. The man hanging on the cross was carrying not only the accusations of blasphemy launched by religious leaders, but also the spiritual destiny of humanity. This video follows the day of that Roman centurion, who passed from being a relentless executor to a transformed man. By faith, for a Roman centurion, duty was above any emotion. Famous for their contemporary discipline, his loyalty to the empire, and his ability to lead in the most extreme circumstances, these soldiers rarely were affected by what they saw. The centurion, in charge of the crucifixion of Jesus, it was no different, had faced battles, bloody, and witnessed innumerable executions. For him, crucifixion was simply a brutal act, but necessary to maintain the order of Rome. However, that Friday, something did not fit. While watching the prisoner who was about to be executed, the centurion could not ignore a strange sensation. Jesus did not behave like the other damned, did not scream, he did not curse his executioners or beg for their lives. Instead, he walked with a disconcerting dignity. During the trial, the centurion had been a witness how the soldiers mocked Jesus, placing a crown on him of thorns on his head and hitting him, as they called him, King of the Jews, was a common scene before a crucifixion. But Jesus' behavior was not. Endured everything in silence, without hatred or resistance, as Jesus carried his cross through the narrow streets of Jerusalem. Stumbling under its weight, the centurion watched him closely. Had commanded many executions, and I knew that the condemned used to paint themselves until the last moment, desperately fighting their destiny. But Jesus was different. Its calm defied logic and began to disturb the centurion to remain impartial. Fulfilling his duty, ordered Simon of Cyrene to help carry the cross. For him, was not a gesture of compassion, but a measure practiced to ensure that the execution will continue as planned. But inside, could not avoid wonder who that man really was. That even in the midst of the pain, it seemed unbreakable. As the procession advanced, the screams of the crowd broke the silence. Some mocked Jesus while others cried bereavedly. The division was evident. Religious leaders instigated hatred, while small groups watched with tears in the eyes. Upon reaching Golgotha, known as the place of the skull, Jesus was nailed to the cross and elevated between two thieves. The centurion, firm as always, observed every detail carefully. I was disappointed to witness the fear and despair of condemned, to hear cries and curses addressed to the executioners or to heaven. Jesus was different. Once again, he was not screaming, did not beg, did not curse. Instead, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they are doing." The sentence resonated as a persistent echo in the master soldier's mind. Forgive them. could not help but wonder sorry. For whom? For those who were nailing him to the cross. For soldiers who, as if it were a game, they shared their clothes by drawing lots. For the princes who mocked without compassion. Something inside the centurion was beginning to shatter, because that was not the reaction of an ordinary man. The words of Jesus went through the armor, emotional burden that he had built over the years. Then something happened that defied all logic. The sweltering and warm sky suddenly got dark at noon. They were not just clouds, it was a palpable smile, almost supernatural, as if creation itself was lamenting. For 3 long hours, the earth seemed to be in mourning. The centurion felt the weight of that atmosphere, strange and inexplicable, tried to keep his composure in front of his men. But I could not deny that something extraordinary was happening. Then a violent earthquake shook the site. The rocks split, and a sense of dread invaded all those present. In spite of everything, Jesus hanging on the cross, a serenity that was disconcerting, with a last scream, gave his spirit. It was a moment that made not only the earth tremble, but also the souls of those who were there. The veil of the temple was torn from top to bottom, as if a barrier, invisible, would have been broken between the human and the divine. The centurion, to brutality and violence, was astounded. Everything inside him told him that he had witnessed something beyond of the earthly. And then, the truth hit him with the force of a revelation. Truly, this was the Son of God. But that statement was not just an impulse, was the result of everything I had seen and felt that day. The words of forgiveness, the undisturbed silence, dignity in the face of suffering, supernatural signals. Everything came together to the beliefs that had, defined as a Roman soldier, had spent his life seeing force as a tool of synthesis. But on that cross, understood that true strength resided in sacrifice and love. That day that he had to do one more in his routine as an executor became a watershed in its existence. As the snow began to, the centurion remained motionless, contemplating the horizon with a mind full of questions and an heart. Had started the day like a man, by violence and military discipline, but now he felt transformed. In the following days, could not turn the words of Jesus the Father out of his mind. Forgive them, because they don't know what they are doing, were like a persistent melody, challenging his understanding and stirring his soul when he heard rumors that the tomb was empty and that Jesus had been seen alive. Something inside awakened. Stories about apparitions only confirmed what I was already feeling. Deep down, that man was not like any other. The centurion knew he could never be the same again. The harshness that had defined his life was falling apart before a force that could not understand that I was calling on him to look for answers. Every time I die on that day, I felt that I had witnessed something eternal, something that transcended time and space. That event marked the beginning of a new stage in his life. Now he was no longer just a Roman soldier, was a man touched by divine grace, someone who was beginning to glimpse the true meaning of faith, forgiveness, and redemption. The story of the centurion reminds us that no one is outside from the reach of divine grace. A man by war and brutality was transformed by witnessing the sacrifice of Jesus. What began as an act of execution became an encounter with eternal love. As well as the centurion, we are all invited to reflect on the impact of the cross in our lives. That sacrifice was not just a historic event, was an act of love that opened a path towards reconciliation with God. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to take a step of faith. Allows the transformation experienced by the centurion inspires your own spiritual path. And remember, the cross is not only a symbol of suffering, but an invitation to the meeting with love and redemption. Finally, if this message resonated with you, consider becoming a member of this channel. Leave a like and subscribe. Your support allows us to bring this message of hope and faith to more people. I say goodbye for now, but I leave you with this reflection, as well as the life of the centurion was transformed by what he witnessed. Today you too can experience this change. God bless you. Que Dios te bendiga.